Now let's take this opportunity for a launch. That was pretty slow. All right, what is up everybody? I'm Max with Out of Spec Reviews and another entry of our cheap EV series. Today I'm looking at a used Kia Soul EV from 2016. So what do you need to know about this? Well, in this series, right, we've looked so far at the Chevy Bolt, the Volkswagen e-Golf, and the Nissan Leaf. Well, this is most like the e-Golf in terms of what we looked at. It is a compliance car because if you're familiar with the Kia Soul, well, you're familiar with it. It is a cube car, back when cube cars still were a thing. And it's one of the few cube cars still surviving on the US market today, actually. So this EV has been in production since 2015 for that model year in the US. Now there is a new version of this that has a bigger battery, a lot more range that's in Europe. We sadly don't get that. So this is a 2016 model, but it is mechanically similar to the models dating all the way up until 2019 when they did offer Soul EV. So what do we get here? Well, we're looking at a 27 kilowatt hour battery pack. Later, these were offered with a 30 kilowatt hour pack, marginally better, 111 miles of range. It is an air-cooled pack, just like the Leaf and the e-Golf, so keep that in mind for degradation. However, these always came standard with a heat pump, which means they have a very efficient climate control system. They heat really well, and that has been super nice to see. But there are some other interesting quirks about it that kind of make it, well, compromise besides the range. So fine enough range, better than e-Golf, nowhere near something like the Bolt. But I'm going to show you right now, if I open it up, we have an interesting charging story. So really cool charging door. I actually like the way this operates. It's kind of like the Leaf here. We have a standard outlet for level 1 and level 2 charging, you know, through your garage or just any kind of slower charging. But we also have direct current charging by virtue of CHAdeMO. Controversial. CHAdeMO is that standard, of course, that is no longer as popular in the US, and we're switching mostly to CCS, which is where you have a connector here. But on this car, if you want a direct DC charge, you have to use CHAdeMO. Now it does charge pretty quickly, 0 to 80% in like half an hour or less. So it has the, you know, high current charging through DC. It's just through CHAdeMO, just like with the Leaf. So CHAdeMO stations are still available. There's fewer of them. I think mostly everyone's going to CCS, but it's not like you can't find CHAdeMO around in places. It's just less common. Another benefit I didn't mention in the Leaf is that CHAdeMO had this vehicle to home capability that you could use in your garage. You could actually use your vehicle's battery pack as like load storage for basically your home. You know, stuff like the Ford Lightning does that now through a dedicated breakout box and through the CCS connector on that car. But here it was kind of earlier on through CHAdeMO. So if you have a specific home setup that you can take advantage of for CHAdeMO for that, that's something I should point out. Now I'm going to close this door. It is motorized, so let me figure out how to safely operate it actually. Oh. Okay, I believe it's not motorized, it's just a mechanical thing that unlatched, but I can just click it back into place there. Cool. So really nice charging door, but a little bit unfortunate about CHAdeMO just because we're seeing that less commonly in the US. Wheels, we have 16 inchers here as standard. These are the original ones with those Aero, you know, hubcaps. Tires are not original by any stretch, but they are 205 width. By the way, I should mention this used Kia Soul we're looking at today is courtesy of Chima Motors in Fort Collins. A great kind of used lot that has, you know, cars from every brand, and we found this one at their lot, so we're using it today. Now, I should point out, because this was a compliance car, they didn't make as many of these as you can find for, like, let's say Chevy Bolt, Nissan Leaf. This was sold only in like 10 states, I believe. So it's not like you can find a ton of them. I actually struggled a bit to find several in Colorado. They do exist, but there's just not that many of them surviving on the used market today because not many were sold to begin with. In terms of powertrain, we are looking at a 109 horsepower motor providing, I believe, 210 pound-feet of torque just on the front axle like every other EV we've looked at, so no form of all-wheel drive here. That's fine. Now this is an SUV style hatchback, and in terms of cargo space, I think it actually will best the Bolt with the seats folded down because it's such a boxy shape. However, because this was a conversion, there is an unfortunate reality that they had to make the load floor higher here. You can look under here and find that original level 1 120 volt Kia charger that it came with, so that's nice to see that's still there. I'm not seeing the 240 volt level 2 charger on this used one. That one might have gone missing, I don't know. But anyhow, that's there, and it looks like there's an air compressor too. So here's some just basically floor mats. Obviously this is a used vehicle, but these are manufacturer original floor mats, as you can see by that electric branding. We have the 60/40 rear folding seats in the Soul, and something that I've always liked about the Soul, I've actually driven the gas version of this car a fair amount because I have a friend who has one, and man, super practical. Once you fold down the seats, you're just looking at this very boxy shape, and yeah, I don't know, the Cube, the Honda Element, the Ford Flex. I guess these cars are not as much in vogue now, but I still love them because look at that. You just get such a very usable amount of space there by virtue of that, you know, non-slope, very rectangular roofline. Super nice. I'm gonna close the trunk though, and we'll take a brief look at the interior. So interior on this particular model, this was the EV Plus trim. So this was actually the higher end trim. We get heated seats for the rear passengers. Kia even back then was really doing well on the standard features. And in terms of upholstery, well, it is, I believe, vegan materials. I don't think this is real leather. I think this is leatherette. And you do get a center armrest, which I don't believe we had one in the Nissan Leaf. And there's one in the Chevy Bolt, e-Golf, I forget. But yeah, you do have a center armrest with cup holders there. Really nice, and you can actually seat 5 people in this car. In terms of load floor, it's actually surprisingly flat for a car that had to be converted. But you can see that it's a little bit raised compared to what the gas Nissan Leaf was. The gas Kia Soul. So even though you don't have much of a hump in the middle, the whole floor here has actually been raised substantially for them to fit that battery pack. So I'm gonna get in the driver's seat now. And here in the driver's seat, let me start the car up so you can see what the gauge clusters look like. Now this is one of those EVs with a power button, because of course in the gas version, this was an engine start stop system. Pretty normal PRND selector. You get a nice little tone, very much a kind of, you know, dose of personality in this car. I actually like these gauges a lot. They're really, I think, quite slick. It's pretty simple. And then in terms of going through the menus, we can do that here as well. I'm gonna turn the radio off briefly, apologies for that. Let me find the volume knob, which is very obvious here, very nice to see. By the way, you do get navigation on this. I believe that's offered in EV Plus trim. It's a fine navigation system. It's the Kia infotainment, Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto, I believe standard on basically every model year, at least 2016 and newer. So that's really awesome. Kia killing it with those kind of standard features. Speaking of feature content, you also do get heated and cooled seats. Look at that. And like I was mentioning, you get that heat pump as standard. So a pretty energy efficient climate system, also air filtration, so they say built in. Super cool in that respect. And also I just like the design of this. This is such a like high personality instrument cluster, or with the dashboard basically, right? It's just, I don't know, no other vehicle looks like this. And that's the thing about the Soul. It also has these like lovely little details, like these speakers above the air vents here. The Kia Soul is just brimming with personality, and that's why I've always loved this, both in its gas form and the EV form. By the way, in terms of feature content, we do have a heated steering wheel. Super, super nice. So yeah, that is the Kia Soul, by the way. Steering wheel has some additional media buttons for Bluetooth phone calls and all that as well. Very, very functional. And that's how I would define this car. It's a little bit quirky, it's a little bit funky because it's a Soul, but it's also eminently functional. And in that way, I would say it's a little bit like the e-Golf, where that car is very, right, pragmatic, but a little bit modest on the specifications. This is a little slower than that e-Golf, a little bit dynamically, I think, worse set up. It's got a torsion beam rear end. It's, you know, based off that Kia Soul. It's not a Volkswagen Golf in terms of driving dynamics, but even in this, you know, earlier, lower battery version, you get appreciably more range than the Golf, because that was a 24 kilowatt hour pack. This is 27 kilowatt hours. And the Kia is just more efficient. I'm observing, I think, like high 3.8, 3.9 miles a kilowatt hour. So pretty efficient EV. Now what I'm gonna do, oh, by the way, one thing I should mention, LED headlights, let's go. Love seeing those projector beams, really well done. Anyhow, so yeah, I'm now gonna drive this, give some driving impressions. Then I'm going to do a buyer's guide where I look at which options you should get on this, and then look at the local used market around here, see if we can find another Kia Soul cheaper or for a good deal. This one from Chima Motors is $18,000 currently. It has 40,000 miles on it. So that's some context for that. But let's get into the driving part of this video. Right, driving the Kia Soul EV. Now it's already powered up, so I'm just going to use my standard, actually very standard shifter to shift it into drive. And there is a B mode. So below drive, I have B. I'm actually going to use that because that applies regenerative braking, right? That technology in EVs where you run the motors backwards and recuperate some of your motion energy, thereby slowing down. So this car does have that regen braking, but unfortunately, I can't really find a one pedal mode in this. Of course, the newer Kia EVs, right, EV6, all of that, you do get one pedal. Not so on at least this version of the Soul EV. And there's no paddle shifters to adjust that kind of regen recuperation either. So that is a little bit disappointing. I do slow down when I let my foot off the accelerator, but I won't actually go to a stop. The car will creep at about 4 or 5 miles an hour, just like a torque converted automatic Kia Soul would. Sorry, a CVT, I believe that's what they use. But just, you know, basically it has that creep function, which I'm not a fan of, because I think an EV, once, yes, it's an adjustment period, but once you get used to one pedal driving, that's one of their big benefits. It's just so nice to have, and not having that here is kind of bumming me out. Now, as I'm driving around Fort Collins, you know, it's beautiful fall weather, by the way. It is a very nice around town car, and that's really how this one should be set up. With that range, it's like e-Golf. I think it's the car you kind of want to drive around town, and probably not on crazy road trips. So what I'm gonna do is, after this stop sign, just give a brief launch to a legal speed limit in this neighborhood, but then we'll get it into kind of more of a highway driving situation. Now, I told you the motor specs earlier, right? 109 horsepower, coming from, I think, like 81 kilowatts, whatever that converts to. I'm actually gonna wait until I pass this unfortunate bump. Now let's launch it till 25. Not very fast. So 0 to 60 is 10-ish seconds. I think 11 seconds was their official rating. Maybe it can be a bit faster than that. It is by no means a fast car, and you can just tell that driving it. It's not dangerously slow, but it's kind of like that e-Golf where it's like fine. It's electric still. It's got the torque down low, so it's not like you start, it's not like you start off slow, but you get slow pretty quickly, I would say, after 10, 15 miles an hour. So let's go on to a little bit of a higher speed road and see what it is like here. Now I'm starting from basically 10 miles an hour, and I'm just gonna juice it, foot to the floor. Okay. That was a linear progression of speed, you know, very predictable. It is electric. It has a nice kind of powertrain response, but again, just not fast, nowhere near kind of whipping my head back in the seat. We are, you know, leagues away from something like not only a Plaid, but even the Chevy Bolt, which I think is basically just about twice as powerful as this car. So fair enough. However, this does have a curb weight of 3,200 pounds. So not, I think, like 300 pounds heavier than its gas version. Heavier, but it still behaves like a Soul. I've driven the gas Soul before. It's not a bad vehicle around town. Very soft steering feel. I can actually adjust the steering mode between normal, sport, which just tightens it up, and comfort. Of course, it's electronic steering. I don't think any of them are particularly brilliant. It's not at all a direct steering setup. It's very assisted, very soft, very disconnected, but that's what you get with a Kia Soul. It's a front-wheel drive, kind of economy hatchback driving experience with more of that SUV room by virtue of its boxy shape. And like I said earlier, torsion beam setup on the rear end. So, this is not a car you drive at the limit at all, but that's perfectly fine. And in terms of efficiency, if I go into the EV menu here, I can actually see my range. So 92 miles right now estimated, pretty good. And I'm getting recommendations for nearby charging stations, and then I can actually look at my eco driving score. If I tap that, and it's telling me basically that I'm an eco level 6. I guess that's on a scale out of 10. So I'm doing okay, right in the middle. 3.6 miles a kilowatt hour current consumption. Keep in mind, I have done a few of those not so fast launches. On this kind of road where we're going 45, 50 miles an hour, it's perfect. It is behaving just as you would expect a Soul to. It is sedate, comfortable enough suspension. It is, staying straight, and very soft, comfortable steering and ride quality overall. NVH, I would say, is fine. It's nothing amazing. This is also it's a cube car. What do you expect? I think it's fine. It is, especially now at the prices these are going for. When they came out initially, they were a little bit expensive, but they have depreciated just like the e-Golf has. So that has helped a little bit. Now let's take this opportunity for a launch. That was pretty slow. Okay, what I have pulled up is Auto Tempest with the Kia Soul EV. Now, the buyer's advice section of this video is actually pretty simple because while it was offered from 2015 through 2019, there were really two trims most people could get. There was the Soul EV and there's the Soul EV Plus adding this imitation leather, some more advanced fog lights, the ventilated front seats, a few other luxury features. You could option a panoramic sunroof like you could get in the gas Soul, but this particular model doesn't have it, much to my detriment as a video reviewer because I can't mount a GoPro there. But if you want a sunroof, you have to look for that as an option. However, this Soul we're in right now that I've been looking at in this video cost $18,000 from Chima Motors. That's what they're saying. So that's well under the 25 grand cap that we need for that used EV incentive coming into effect next year. But I'm going to see if we can find a cheaper one, or maybe an EV Plus with a sunroof or something. Who knows? Now, in terms of other options, don't worry about the heat pump. I've been bagging on and on about that. And every other EV in this series, it was always standard on Soul EV. Great to see. In terms of climate, you also did get standard heated seats, things like that. So just adding the ventilated seats, adding a few other features, that's what Plus did. There was an EV E-trim, -E after Kia Soul EV, but that was, I believe, California exclusive. None of these trims really changed much mechanically with the motor system or the battery or anything else. So we're going to put in Kia Soul EV. Now, there was a 30 kilowatt hour pack added in later model years. I'm not sure if we'll see the later model years under the price that we're looking for. So I'm going to put in the max price of $25,000. And then I'm going to search on Auto Tempest within a 500 mile radius of, let's just say, Boulder, Colorado, where I live. So we're looking at a Carvana, some Carvana options, EV Plus. All of them seem to be well under 20 grand. That's good. That's kind of what I'd want to see. There is a normal EV actually for 16 grand. So that one, without a few of the fancy options the EV Plus has, mechanically very similar car. Another EV Plus, more EV. So it seems like you can get the EV base trim for actually under 16 grand. So honestly, really good. Better and cheaper than e-Golf now that I'm looking at it. Yeah, this is pretty good news here. Now here's an EV E-trim, that very base one I was talking about. I'm not sure what's up with that because that looks like it's actually more expensive. So maybe it is mislabeled. Let's see. I think it just, they added the E for electric. They don't mean it's the -E trim. That could just be confusing branding, but I'll go away from that listing. Let's look past the Carvana results, see if we can find other dealers. By the way, the ones that are pending sale that have already sold, all EV pluses around that 18 to 19 grand range. So it seems like what they're asking for this one is pretty reasonable. Now those ones do have a similar amount of mileage, 30 to 40,000 miles, not too bad. All right, as I'm looking at cars.com offers from other dealers, we're seeing this one, which is really expensive. I wouldn't get that one from Nebraska. We're seeing an EV Plus in Salt Lake City, Utah for 17 grand. That seems like a pretty good price, but it's rather, it's a higher mileage compared to the other ones we've seen. Everyone was mad at me in the Nissan Leaf video for saying 60,000 miles is high mileage. With an air-cooled battery pack, you never know. With degradation, it could be. Always test drive the car, see the kind of estimated range it's giving you. If you're an Uber nerd, well, you can use an app like Leaf Spy with the Leaf, or get what data you can from a test drive. Always when buying a car, new or used. I just always recommend that. Of course, plenty of cars reach 60, 70 grand miles or 120,000 miles and are just fine. But with an air-cooled battery pack like you have in the Soul EV, it's something to look out for. Here I'm seeing a really cheap one in Denver, actually. A little higher mileage than this, but it's an EV Plus, same color, for 15 grand. Wow. So pretty good offer there than the one I'm looking at here. So that is basically the story for Kia Soul EV. Very simple on the options. I like that Kia kept it simple that way. I've found actually a surprising amount of them for pretty cheap prices. So in terms of the value options we've looked at in this series, I think this is the best one so far. In terms of absolute capability, yes, Chevy Bolt, liquid cooled battery pack, more range, just a more capable car, has a more normal CCS connector. But I think the Soul EV, I've been surprised actually by, one, how much it is like a normal gas Kia Soul, which is a good thing. 2, how much standard equipment there is. And 3, the low prices on these. Pretty amazing. So far, I think this is the kind of best hidden gem we found in the series. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments. Let us know if you have any other questions. And next up, well, we shall see. But we're going to look at another used EV, at least one more in this series, before we decide which one we'll go with. So stay tuned.